Hello and welcome to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, and today, in honor of the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film that just released in theaters this week, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I'm diving straight into the quantum realm. I am giving my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania today on this channel. Hello all, welcome to my channel, The Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, film critic, and today, with the recent release of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I decided let's just talk about this movie. Now, I will say, no spoilers. I am not going to spoil this movie for anyone who has not seen it. I'm going to keep this review generally vague, but I'm going to break down everything that I liked and did not like about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So with that all said, let's jump into the movie with its synopsis. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania follows Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, who is living his best life post the Battle of Earth. Yet everything goes awry when his daughter Cassie Lang and Hank Pym are revealed to be working on a device that makes contact with the quantum realm. When Janet van Dyne discovers this, she tells her husband that he must shut down the device. However, a portal is opened that sucks the heroes down into the quantum realm. Trapped in the quantum realm, the heroes discover that Janet van Dyne has been hiding secrets about the true dangers trapped within the quantum realm in the form of Kang the Conqueror. Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lily, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Michael Douglas all return as their respective characters from the Ant-Man franchise, with newcomers Katy O'Brian, William Jackson Harper, and Bill Murray joining the cast. Katheryn Newton replaces Emma Fuhrmann as Cassie Lang alongside Jonathan Majors, officially making his MCU debut as Kang the Conqueror. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the 31st installment within the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the kickstart to Phase 5. Peyton Reed returns to direct. So with that all said, let's get into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as it relates to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And I wanted to just share a few things, so for new audience members who aren't just aware of where I am with the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, I'm in a kind of love-hate relationship with them, in the fact that I don't think these movies are bad. I have not disliked any of the previous films so far from Phase 4. I thought all of them were passable, with maybe a few exceptions in there, but for generally, even the ones that it was the hardest on, like Thor, Love and Thunder, I still had positive things to say, and while the review was mixed, it was still mixed positive. I think there has been certainly a step back and decline in quality, and I think there is a little bit of failure as well as some success that is continuing to be found within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For instance, there is currently a struggle with multiversal storytelling that Marvel is facing. And that's the fact of, if there are infinite amount of universes where these characters exist infinite amount of times, that means the consequences can become so little. It doesn't feel like there's any impact because, oh, if they die here, they'll be back in another universe. And what are the stakes with that? There's also this struggle right now with interconnectivity, in the sense that all the projects are so tied together, and it's an installment. It's literally one connects to the other, which connects to the other, which connects to the others. For Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I would really highly suggest you at least know what's going on in Loki. Loki doesn't necessarily directly affect your understanding and view of this movie. However, having a background on He Who Remains and what exactly this whole multiversal storytelling is going to help and your appreciation for aspects of this movie. For some people, that might be too much of a commitment for them, especially with a growing decline in some of the films and TV shows and a growing superhero fatigue. If you're already a little fatigued on superhero, forcing an audience member to watching more is going to be a struggle for them. Also, and this has been my biggest criticism of Marvel Phase 4 by far, was the CGI and the feeling of being rushed. I don't think Marvel has ever had particularly the greatest CGI, but I think a lot of the times it's passable to good. In some cases, even great. That is not been the case in Phase 4. And in particular, Thor, Love and Thunder, as I pointed out in my review, which you can watch that. And again, if you like these videos, make sure to like and subscribe to the Beniverse for more videos on that. But I criticized Thor, Love and Thunder very hard for its feeling of being rushed and the CGI just looking atrocious downright. That has been a big consistent struggle for me with these Marvel Cinematic Universe films, where I'm watching it and I'm like, I can really feel the productivity of these films. It feels like they are being released and having to hit a quota. And when I'm watching it, I feel like I'm watching something that is passionless. That has been my biggest barrier to liking some of these films, where I'm just watching it and I'm just like, I check out even more if I don't think the effects look good. But where I do think Marvel has continued to find success, and I think it's going to be a very key point in framing this conversation today on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, is its casting. They generally do understand who are actors that the audience is going to respond to as these characters. In this case, and this case specifically, we're going to be focusing on that part as it comes to Jonathan Majors, Kang the Conqueror, because arguably that's the most important thing of this movie, is Kang the Conqueror and Jonathan Majors. At least as Marvel has presented it, Jonathan Majors is going to be really the stepping stone villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the next 5 to 10 years. Who knows how long exactly the reign of Kang will be. We're going to have to understand, appreciate, and grow to care about the stakes of Kang the Conqueror. So does this movie succeed in that way? And again, it's the challenging of casting. So we'll get into all this. But let's just start with the film structure of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I think what Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 does so interestingly is it embodies the strengths and weaknesses within Marvel, in this fact that there are some mixed bagged elements of this film that I think are long-running critiques of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For instance, one thing that immediately when watching this film that I picked up on is this film is running at 100 miles an hour. It is jumping from scene to scene. It is so much exposition, so much backstory just given away in seconds, minutes. I went to the bathroom for literally not more than 2 minutes. And I missed like a pretty essential scene within the movie. Now, luckily that scene ended up being in the trailers and I was able to catch up on it. But that is the pace of this film. There is never really a good time to step out, or at least the first time watching it, because something is always about to happen. And that is a positive and a negative in some ways. The positive thing is it makes the film feel very energetic. And mixed with the humor, it just feels like this film has an energy. At 2 hours, it kind of just breezes by and it goes by and it goes by. In a criticism, though, is the movie that I thought about when watching Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania that I had comparisons to in its film structure was Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, and the narrative structure that that film decides to take, and the fact that it is jumping from planet to planet, to scene, to character, all with this plot that doesn't ever fully come together in special ways. And I will admit there was a little bit of a Rise of Skywalker feel to this movie. Now, I think where Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is more successful than Rise of Skywalker is I was more connected to the overall story. And I think Ant-Man is able to ground itself far more in its characters than Rise of Skywalker does, and I don't think Ant-Man relies on such heavy nostalgic callbacks to work. But the actual structure, if you were to just remove everything that you know about these two movies and watch how they move and how they just go from scene to scene to scene, I think they're actually quite similar in their scattered brain nature. For a film that is so concerned with the history of multiversal wars as it relates to Kang the Conqueror, variants, the inner workings of the quantum realm, this film never gets away from itself. I did always feel this grounded nature in the sense of this is an Ant-Man story. It keeps the flavor, it keeps the comedy, it keeps that type of energy that Peyton Reed, that Paul Rudd have brought to this franchise. It keeps this family dynamic centralized. What works so well about this film, and the biggest praise that I can sing about this film, is Kang the Conqueror as played by Jonathan Majors. The question on everyone's mind going into it is, how is Kang the Conqueror? How is Jonathan Majors as an actor? Does he bring the goods? Can he be the big baddie within the MCU? And I'm just here to say it. Jonathan Majors is very good as the Conqueror. What he does very differently from what the version we see of him in Loki is, in Loki, he is this very quirky type of character. He is very just so out there and eccentric in his approach, appearance, and manner. Wherein, as Kang the Conqueror, in this version that we get of Kang the Conqueror, he is uber serious, and it is in straight up juxtaposition with the movie. And that works for me, because of other characters that they use to kind of balance off of Jonathan Majors' intensity. In particular, MODOK is used in wonderful effects in this movie, and it is able to allow the film to keep its comedic energy while also introducing something so ultra serious in Kang the Conqueror. But yes, I do believe Jonathan Majors, is great in this role. There's something just very dangerous about Majors as a performer that I think has been true with him as an actor since the beginning of his career. There is a ruthlessness to him. There's something that always feels omnipresent within him as an actor. And there's something unsettling about him. He does just kind of feel like a clear-cut killer, hungry for power. Nobody does intensity quite like he does at such a young age. This character, Kang the Conqueror, doesn't have any real motivations that you can attach onto. He is not a particularly a villain that you can sympathize with, but there is a natural charisma from Majors that works in this role. And at any moment when Kang is on screen, it feels like he will kill everyone just to showcase his power. He very much is a character that is best described as power Ruddenbach. And I appreciated that from Majors. Now, I will say, if this is the approach that we get to Kang for the next 5 years, and this is the energy that Majors brings as an actor into Kang, I think it will get old. What I want to see Majors do in this role is he gets to play the hundreds of different variants of Kang the Conqueror, and we get to see these ultra different personalities all kind of clash, and we get to see just a level of intensity and scaredness from Majors as an actor. And I truly believe when we get to that part, or what I'm hoping is that we're going to see Majors really accomplish something very special and something very unique within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If this is the tone of Kang, if it takes this same tone as Kang the Conqueror does in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, for one movie, I think that works. For movies going forward, and this is the tone just moving forward, I think it's going to get boring and stale really quick. Now let's talk about some of the other performers in this film. Paul Rudd is always delightful in these roles. I think he's very good as Scott Lang. I think in this film, he really gets to showcase some emotion, and that same emotion that I found him so good to do in Avengers Endgame with the daughter bond, I think he continues to do that. Now, other actors in here aren't as lucky. Michael Douglas is able to just be Michael Douglas in front of a green screen. Good for him. He got a paycheck. I like seeing him as an actor, and he has a natural charisma on screen that kind of just allows you to just accept that he obviously has no clue what's going on. He's not particularly invested in this, but he seems to probably be having a good time joking around with everyone. Michelle Pfeiffer already talked about who I thought she was one of the standouts in this film. The person who gets hurt the most from this quantum size and scale, the newness of the quantum realm, is Evangeline Lily. She is truly an afterthought within this film. She just doesn't get to do much. She has a few pivotal scenes from here and there, and specifically one near the end. But overall, you could have removed Wasp from this movie, and it doesn't feel like much would have changed about this film. And the same could be said with the performance of Katheryn Newton, a performance that I liked as Cassie Lang. However, I never saw any reason to recast. Finally, on the cast, it's the new cast as well. There are a bunch of new actors who get roles in this film. None of them really get much to do. My favorite of them is William Jackson Harper, who played Chidi in The Good Place. I liked seeing him within the MCU confines. I liked the character that he played, but this was very much an actor bailing out a underwritten character. So it's more the fact that I liked William Jackson Harper more than I actually cared about the character he was playing. I hope to see more of him in this universe because, again, I like William Jackson Harper. But as a character, he didn't do much for me. Now, jumping forward a little bit in my review, and again, I'm keeping this very vague because I know people haven't gotten the chance to see it, so this is a non-spoiler review. I want to talk about some of the generalizing critiques within the MCU. There is been a running, consistent complaint about the too self-referential, too much comedy of this film. This film is written by writers of Rick and Morty, and it very much has that feel in pacing, in style, in comedy. And for Ant-Man, for this one, I thought it was very effectively funny. There is a decision that we'll get to a little later regarding one particular character that I know has been very divisive. I'll just say at this moment, I liked it, and I thought this film kept in tone with the Ant-Man franchise. The bad CGI complaint, as I already touched on a little earlier, I don't think this film has particularly bad CGI. Here's what I do want to define this is, and this is my biggest criticism of Quantumania right here, it's the quantum realm itself. The design of it and the special effects in this film, for large portions of this film, lose all sense of scale, which is very important within an Ant-Man film. Some of the most fun scenes in the Ant-Man films are the scene, for instance, where it's Ant-Man standing next to Thomas the Train Engine, and we get to see those different sizes, and the size of it gets to really be felt, which is kind of the key to Ant-Man's power. In this one, minus like one or two scenes, you don't really get to see like the full display of what Ant-Man's powers are. The scale of this film is kind of all over the place, and so you're stripping one of the most fun parts about the Ant-Man movies is this, seeing Ant-Man shrink and grow, and you're taking that away from the film. So there is this like kind of neutering of Ant-Man that I didn't like. I think when he is in the quantum realm in particular, you lose all sense of sizing for Ant-Man and on these other characters, which again, when their central power is shrinking and growing, that's a really bad thing. And I think that is where this film struggles the most. Here's what I will say on my opinion of the CGI in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I did not notice it to be particularly bad or good in either way. I didn't find it to be standout. I wouldn't go as far as to say this is going to be one of the 5 best special effects within a film. Now, at the scale and budget and the money that Marvel has, that could be a legitimate criticism, and that could be a point of why aren't you paying professionals to give them more time and resources to make your films look as perfect as possible. That's a fair enough criticism. I will say when watching it, I felt neither one way nor the other on it. It wasn't particularly great. I also would not call it particularly bad. I've seen much worse films and much worse MCU installments, so maybe I'm giving it a pass. Maybe that's an unfair thing to claim for these movies. Maybe I should hold them to better standards. The reality is it never bothered me, and I never thought about it while watching this scene. While watching Thor: Love and Thunder, yes, there are particular scenes where I'm just like, oh, that's a lapse in CGI. That looks bad. Same with Doctor Strange. Shang-Chi has it. There are films where that is true. In Ant-Man and the Wasp 3's case, I never found that to be true. Let's get to also one of the biggest complaints that I've heard about this movie, which is MODOK. MODOK is awesome in this movie. I loved MODOK. He's one of my favorite elements in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And there is such a unique character design that I think people have been calling very bad and looks very stupid on screen, and calling it bad special effects, lazy special effects, rush special effects. Here's the thing. I think that design choice is a very clear, conscious choice. I think it is supposed to look stupid. I thought it was done with such great comedic timing and purpose that I actually thought this special effect worked in wonders for this movie. Anytime MODOK came on screen, I went to see this movie with a friend. She told me I was shaking with laughter every time he came into screen. I honestly could not get enough of him on screen. I thought he was just delightful in this movie. I thought they were able to capture the ridiculousness of MODOK perfectly in this. And I thought it worked for the visual style that this film is trying to achieve. I had a blast watching this film, and I was able to forget any cynicism that I had going into the Marvel Universe. That kind of just evaporated as I was watching the movie, because I was so engrossed in the comedy, in the quantum realm, in the history, that I kind of just went for it. And if you're not going to go for this movie, if this is not going to be your cup of tea, then it's not going to be your cup of tea. I had a great time watching this film, even though I still have some questions on what this does for the MCU and if this is a good thing for movie making in general. The future, we got to see what Marvel is going to do with it. I don't know if the Rick and Mortification and writing of the MCU is going to start getting noticeable, because it has become very similar. If you watch this movie and then you watch a random episode from Rick and Morty, you're probably going to find a lot of similarities. They are very noticeable, and it has very much shifted from the Joss Whedon era of Marvel to, I would call it, the Rick and Morty Dan Harmonification of Marvel. But when I was watching it, did I have a blast with this movie? I thought this film had a lot of great humor, fun performances. I enjoyed the world building. I think the comp to Star Wars has been very lively, and I felt that. It had some really fun banter throughout, a really great villain introduction, and for all of that, it just left it on a great place for me. And I think the film works largely also because it has a great third act that I was pretty invested in. So I enjoyed Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania for what it was, and I thought it was a really strong entry within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That is not to ignore the critiques that I had in this film, some legitimate complaints you can have about $200 million movie filmmaking, the rush that comes from Marvel filmmaking, the fact that these kind of feel like they're just coming one after another, and they're just building the fatigue. All of that is true, and yet when watching this film, those critiques that I have had in the past, I just didn't think about, and I enjoyed them within the confines of this movie, which I found to be successful. Thus, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is getting 3.5 out of 4 stars for me. I truly enjoyed this movie, and I would highly recommend it to you. Thank you for watching this review. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, here from the Beniverse, from my Beniverse to your universe. Thank you for watching. Take care, and bye-bye.